Good afternoon, everybody. Silke Kaiser here. I am continuing to read my book, Gotcha. If it's your first time here, welcome. I'm going to ask you that you please go to the beginning of when I started posting me reading from my book. I've had two of the most harrowing days. I dealt with an armed robbery yesterday, highly traumatized victims, and all the staff members involved. When there is a home invasion, you always need to look at your staff. I want to say to you that only 10%, I say 10% of all staff members would wish their employers harm. 90% of all people from all backgrounds and all cultures are good people and would not dream of harming a fly. Well, unless they're spraying this, which was I've been spraying today, rapid. I don't believe in killing animals, but flies buzzing, I can't deal. Then this morning, I had to go and do polygraphs as well. Received a call from doggy daycare to say my one dog is very lethargic. So off I went to do my polygraphs. And as you will hear later, if you carry on listening to my podcast, I want to call it on YouTube, that when I polygraph, I can put the world aside. My dog seems fine. I don't know why he's so sleepy, but bloods came back perfect. He was checked from head to toe, so he seems fine. So I'm all ready to continue reading. So I am on Gotcha, Chapter 1, Part 4. So I'm going to finish Chapter 1 and I will read Chapter 2 today, which is a very short chapter. If I stumble over my words today, please forgive me. As I say, it's been a harrowing 48 hours and I'm feeling quite tired actually. Anyway, here goes. So, Chapter 1, Part 4. Once Cliff had received the funds, he sent me an email confirming payment and said he looked forward to working with me. We established that I would start my course on the following Monday, which was just 3 days away. The future obscured itself. How was this new direction going to pan out? Would I fail or would I succeed? At the risk of sounding as if I am bragging, Cliff would one day talk about me to new students, speaking of my success at obtaining confessions. But in the meantime, Nikki phoned me to say that Gladys had come to the shop at 9 a.m. as requested and signed the suspension note. She was going to have her hearing on the day that my course commenced, which was on the following Monday. The labour lawyer would preside over the proceedings. There was no way I could be there as a witness because I was starting my course. I could hear the disappointment in my friend's voice. She was nervous about the entire incident, not having dealt with something like this before. I was as ignorant as her at that stage about the proceedings, and I was therefore unable to reassure her. That is the end of Chapter 1. Chapter 2, Stepping Through the Door. Monday morning arrived, and I set out about 1 hour before the scheduled start time of my course. I was a whole 40 minutes early, being German, so I turned around, found a Wimpy close by and had breakfast. I arrived exactly 5 minutes before the agreed time. I stepped through a larger than normal wooden door, into an entrance hall and into a room filled with desks and chairs. The second and only other student on the course had arrived a little before me. Cliff introduced him as Bongani, and his smile as he greeted me lit up the entire room. He shook my hand in the African way. Shake, twist the hands upwards together, shake again. We sat down, got out our notepads and began to write the interesting, fascinating words that flowed from our lecturer. Cliff spoke about the physiological changes within the human body that occur when people lie, as lying does not come naturally to us. He spoke about how detection of deception came to be, about polygraphs and why people lie. Both Bongani and I instantly realized that we were going to enjoy this course thoroughly. The course finished at 12 p.m. on that day, and as soon as I got into my car, I gave Nikki a call. She advised me that the labour lawyer had dismissed Gladys, dismissed as in fired her, for the irrevocable breakdown of trust between employer and employee. The lawyer had warned Nikki that Gladys would most likely go to the CCMA, but Nikki was resolute now. Gladys had been defiant throughout the proceedings, and this had angered Nikki, who was expecting Gladys to exhibit even a small measure of remorse, which had not been forthcoming. The course that Cliff ran spanned 5 days a week, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m., for 3 intensive weeks. After that, it would be 6 months of practical training. On the second Wednesday that I attended the course, after another very interesting morning, I switched on my phone to find 3 missed calls from Nikki. She had received a notification from the CCMA via fax to appear in 10 days' time. We still used faxes in those days. Nowadays it's emails. As Gladys had approached them for assistance in what she deemed was an unfair dismissal. The Labour lawyer had stressed it was important that I be there as a witness in order to strengthen the case. The problem was that the matter was being heard at the Fox Street CCMA office, which is in the centre of Joburg, and it was at 9 a.m, and this clashed with my course. I told Nikki I'd call her back, and as Cliff and Bongani were still talking in the parking lot, I approached them and explained the situation to them. Diaries were opened, and it was agreed on that day there would be no course. I just love Bongani and Cliff for that. My fellow South Africans accommodating me in such a way warmed my heart, and I was very grateful. The course remained interesting for me, save for the scoring of the charts, which took me some time to understand. Bongani did not struggle at all with this part of the course and grasped scoring immediately. As 12 p.m. rolled around each day, I became more and more excited about my newly chosen career path. I felt that I was standing on the edge of a very big adventure and that I was about to be swept away. Soon, CCMA Day, as Nikki and I christened it, arrived. Nikki easily parked her Toyota Hilux Bakkie in an average-sized parking bay at the Carlton Centre. I, as usual, marvelled at her driving skills. I drove a small car at that time. I always maintained I needed a small, reliable car that got me from point A to point B and that was light on fuel. We walked into the cold entrance of the CCMA building and we were directed to the 4th floor by the security guard. Once there, we had to sign as witnesses on the register provided. We sat down and we were called in at exactly 9 a.m. Gladys walked ahead of us, her exquisite tribal dress swishing as she held her back rigid. She must have felt our eyes boring into her back. I could sense that Nikki's anger, like mine, was rising. The commissioner sat down at the head of the table, and Nikki and I opposite Gladys. The commissioner asked Gladys if she needed a translator. I was flabbergasted when she replied that she did require such a service. Nikki and I looked at each other, making no pretense of the disgust we both felt. Gladys had always communicated well with us and any English-speaking customers that came into the shop. The translator was there within seconds and the proceedings began. Both parties were given a brief opportunity to put forward their case, but since it was conciliation only, the commissioner's duty on that day was to try and reach a financial settlement. He explained to us in his soft voice that had everyone in the room straining to hear that if no settlement was reached, then a date would be set for an arbitration session. He then asked Nikki and me to leave the room. Nikki and I walked some way down the passage, both of us craving a decent cup of coffee, but there was none to be had. Soon the commissioner joined us and explained to us that Gladys had asked for 12 months severance pay, but he had convinced her that she should accept 1 month. I was beginning to see the writing on the wall and realized that this would become a time-consuming and expensive exercise if we had to return to the CCMA. The commissioner said he would wait for Nikki's decision and went back to the room. I agreed with Nikki when she said she would rather pay the month's severance pay as the time being wasted was just not worth it. She reluctantly, and as she later put it, with a burning heart, entered the room and advised the commissioner she would pay the month's salary. The paperwork was drawn up, clearly stating that Gladys, once she had received the monies, would have no further claims against Nikki or her business. The paperwork was signed by both parties, and Nikki agreed to pay Gladys out within the next 24 hours. Nikki transferred the agreed upon amount into Gladys's account as soon as we returned to her shop, making an electronic deposit via the internet banking. I then remembered that Gladys was owed leave and mentioned this to Nikki. Nikki checked how many days were due to Gladys and discovered it was 17 days. We discussed the moral dilemma of whether Gladys deserved this money. We agreed to do the right thing. We worked out her leave days, and Gladys was paid. Nikki logged out of internet banking, and with that, Gladys was gone from our lives for 12 months. When Gladys called Nikki and asked if she could come back to work, to which Nikki politely asked her to never ever contact her again. That brings me to the end of chapter 2. I just want to give a note about the CCMA. In my career, I've been to the CCMA many, many times, and I have definitely found them to be fair. As long as employers dot their I's, cross their T's, follow the law to the letter, the employer is okay. Polygraph does not stand in the CCMA on its own. There must be other evidence. The polygraph must form part of an evidence package. That is all for now. Tomorrow, we will begin chapter 3. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.